It is just about the 10-year anniversary of one of the best comic book movies of all time. Today, we're talking Man of Steel on The Gist. Hey yo, what's good? Welcome to The Gist with me, Jared. Man of Steel is one of my favorite movies of all time. It definitely has a spot in my top 10, maybe even my top 5. Seeing this depiction of Superman forever changed the way I view Big Blue. To travel back to around the time of the year 2013, the MCU had just completed its first phase. We just got the first Avengers movie, having displayed that comic book B and C listers can dominate pop culture and the box office. Christopher Nolan's iconic Batman trilogy had just wrapped up. Marvel Studios was providing audiences with a more lighthearted and comedic depiction of live-action superheroes, whereas DC provided us films of a more serious and darker tone. Enter in Man of Steel. Man of Steel brings us the origin story of Superman, showcasing a somewhat grounded in reality depiction of the man from Krypton. Now, growing up, DC was the more prominent and popular superhero property. The trio of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were characters that everyone knew about. Despite how much I like DC, I never really found myself drawn to the character of Superman. He always seemed too perfect and unrelatable. And Man of Steel was the first time Superman was humanized for me. Amidst the many things that I love about this movie, the questions of philosophical ideology, morality, and purpose are among my favorite. Be warned, I'm gonna talk spoilers for this 10-year-old movie. Man of Steel opens with the dying world of Krypton. Despite this civilization being very advanced in knowledge, ability, and technology, they had got in their own way and doomed themselves for extinction. Krypton was seemingly an authoritarian society, artificially engineering and breeding its people for predetermined roles and purposes, removing a sense of freedom. Back in 2013, I could see the parallels being drawn to our modern society. And watching it today and seeing how close our world is to the one depicted in Krypton, it's an eerie and sobering sight, to say the least. What good is all the advancement if the people aren't free to forge their own paths forward? And of course, the foreshadowing being that Superman would be that symbol of hope and freedom, the ideal for humans to strive for, as the movie puts it. The underlying themes and conundrums posed are so riveting and well executed by the cast and all involved. I still get emotional at all the flashbacks of young Clark Kent, a boy, a teenager with immense power, conflicted with what to do with it. More and more, I appreciate how well Kevin Costner's character as Pa Kent is written, and the dimensions we get in this character. Even though he has this belief that Clark was sent to Earth for a reason, that his existence would change the dynamics of the whole world, he doesn't cling to it like a zealot. Zod. His lines of dialogue convey in him some conflict and some acknowledgement of the limitations or issues of his guiding beliefs. He doesn't speak on his beliefs in absolutist rhetoric, but rather showcases some levels of nuance. Does Clark allow his schoolmates to drown and die in order to conceal his identity and abilities from the world? Does Clark defend himself or retaliate when others mock him or bully him?
You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark, because whatever that man is, good character or bad, he's going to change the world.
The sage wisdom and foresight of Pa Kent is amazing. And we see that wisdom and restraint instilled and developed in Clark as he begins to become the Man of Steel, Superman. I think most people tend to overestimate their own virtuousness and underestimate their own level of depravity. As we often do with movies, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the main character. If you were imbued with ultimate power, what would you do with it? On a scale of Homelander to Superman, where would you fall? Now, if you were 13 with superpowers, honestly, what kind of person would you be? And if you were a parent of a superpowered being, how would you cultivate a moral compass in them? What if it was your kid getting bullied, looked over, or put in harm's way? What kind of parent would you be? I think most of us would fall on this side of the spectrum, rather than this side. I know I would want to John Wick some fools if somebody even came at my dog the wrong way. So if I'm given God-level powers and just so happen to be caught on a bad day, I'm not entirely convinced that I would remain a morally noble person. Who says I'm one now? And that's what's so fantastic about Man of Steel. Even though Superman often makes the right decision, he remains that ideal to strive for. We see the depth and the weight that those decisions have on him. Making the right choice isn't cliche or robotic, but rather layered with complexity and emotion. The exact reality of our human condition. And in probably the most controversial aspect about the movie, we see Superman kill General Zod, the last of his kind.
Never.
This to me is the culmination of the morally gray milieu of the movie. For Krypton, autonomy and advancement doesn't mean the elimination of liberty. Zod was unable to see that putting Krypton first doesn't require the eradication of everyone else. Pa Kent displays the challenges of looking out for others and looking out for oneself. We may have certain beliefs and philosophical affinities, but under what circumstances are exceptions to our moral matrix permitted? For Superman, he stands for hope, for the fundamental belief in the potential for every person to be a force for good, implying that he shouldn't kill a person. And in principle, Zod has the potential to be a force for good. But under the circumstances of that controversial scene and the events leading up to it, Kal-El, Clark, had no other choice than to kill General Zod and make an exception to his guiding philosophy. To me, this was the perfect decision for this version of Superman to make. And we see the emotional toll that this has on Clark. He violated his moral compass. He killed the last of his kind, the people he had been searching the whole 33 years of his life to find and connect with. In pursuit of the greater good, an objective evil had to be committed. Such compelling undertones and themes. In Man of Steel, we get an ideal yet imperfect, emotional but stoic, classic yet reimagined version of Superman. I am often drawn to the stories of DC because they tend to be about gods among men, whereas in Marvel, I perceive most of their stories to be about men trying to be gods. Man of Steel delivers on this idea as we see the struggle and challenges Clark Kent goes through in order to become arguably the best and most humanized version of Superman. And that's the gist for my revisited review of Man of Steel. I could opine so much more about everything I loved about this movie, but I'll save that for another time. I'd like to know what you think about Man of Steel. Are you a fan of the movie? What worked and didn't work for you? Are you as heartbroken as me that Henry Cavill won't be back as Soups? Hit me up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll catch you next time on The Gist. Gotta change. Man, I'm surprised how often that works. Oh, can't forget the finishing touch. They never suspect a thing.